Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Obscure. Well, sort of. Wait a minute. These aren't obscure, these are awesome toy lines. Starting with Transformers Generation 1, originally just known simply as the Transformers. In the first series of the toy line, in the US, it ran from 1984 to 1990, in Europe from 85 to 93, except for the UK, which saw limited releases only in 84. Also in Japan from 85 to 1992, they also had many different variations from other regions. The original toy line is by far the most diverse in terms of toy styling and design. The early years in 84 and 85 focused on the toys originally manufactured in different colors for other brands. They took some of the Diclones, Mega Charge, and other various toys. They also changed the design ethnicity slightly, but most of them were transforming into recognizable real-world vehicles and had limited articulation in robot mode. During this time, many competing brands of shape-shifting robots were on the market, so Hasbro created the rub sign as a mark of authenticity. These black and silver square stickers featured prominently on the toy, and they would change colors when heated to reveal the allegiance of the character, Autobot or Decepticon. In 1986, the success of the Transformers justified investment in new and unique designs. The main theme shifted to Transformers that could combine into teams to form larger robots. It was not a new concept, but it accounted for nearly half of the releases for the next year and a half. Now, it's always really hard to say my favorite toy as a child, because there were so many great ones in the 80s, but, I have to say Transformers were my favorite toy as a child. It beat out Ninja Turtles, although TMNT is a very close second, but there's just something about Transformers. You got a toy that was a truck or a car or a plane, and it also turned into a quote-unquote action figure. It was just such a great time. The toy line has never been better, in my opinion, than G1. And, and that's the good thing about Transformers. Transformers have been around for decades, and it stays, moderately fresh. Like, even I'm a teacher, and the kids still talk about and play with Transformers. There's been tons of iterations, and, it's still going strong. HeMan. HeMan is the principal character of a series of comic books, several animated television series, although in my opinion there's only one good one, the original one, and a live-action movie. He's characterized by his superhuman strength. In most variations, he's the alter ego of Prince Adam. HeMan and his friends attempt to defend the realm of Eternia and the secrets of Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor. HeMan was pitched in three different styles: as a soldier, as a spaceman, or as a barbarian. Obviously the barbarian was chosen. Now some people say that it's a copy of Conan the Barbarian, but Mattel borrowed most of the ideas. They've even hired some of Conan the Savage Sword comic artists and writers to do the inlay and the pictures, and even some poster workups for the HeMan toy line. Multiple playsets, vehicles, and 6 waves of figures were released for the original Masters of the Universe toy line. And when researching the toy line, I found an interesting fact that I didn't know. HeMan is related to Skeletor. In the 2002 HeMan reboot, it was revealed that Skeletor is the half-brother of HeMan's dad, King Randor, so that makes HeMan's arch-enemy his uncle. This shocking revelation can also be traced back to a 1980s HeMan mini-comic called The Search for Keldor. So, there you go. The Kenner Toy Company produced a line of Star Wars action figures based on the characters in the original Star Wars movie trilogy. Over 100 unique action figures were produced and sold from 1978 to 1985, during which time over 300 million Star Wars action figures were sold. The figures were originally released with a double telescoping lightsaber, but it was later changed to a single telescoping lightsaber. Another toy line and brand that's seen its ups and downs over the years, Star Wars has remained on toy shelves for most of the last decades, and now with the new Disney-bought Star Wars movies, we're going to see these for years to come.
Interesting fact, some people may know, some people may not. While officially licensed figures were produced in many countries, others had no official means of distribution. Taking advantage of consumer demand for the toys, manufacturers in some countries released unlicensed bootleg figures. These bootleg figures sometimes command as much as or more than the original figure that came out depicting that character. They vary in materials, casting methods, and of course quality. Some, for instance, the figures produced by the manufacturer Uze in Turkey are some of the highest standards and were often cast in unconventional colors with little regard to authenticity and naming. Like I mentioned, the quirkiness of these figures often command a higher dollar, and people really like to collect the bizarre psychedelic card backs. Now, obviously, the late 70s and early 80s stuff is going to command the highest dollar if you're a collector looking for that Star Wars stuff. I know people like to look down on the 90s stuff and the quote-unquote second trilogy of Star Wars things, but I run across these the most often, and they're, inexpensive, and they still look great. So I do have a few Stormtroopers. I've got some lightsabers, obviously, Boba Fett's reissued helmet, Jango Fett's helmet, stuff like that. That's the kind of things I collect as opposed to just the figures. And this may also be a little off topic. Maybe it does work for it because this is about the toys and collecting it. But with Disney owning Star Wars now, and 1 or 2 Star Wars movies coming out every year for the foreseeable future, I wonder if there's going to be an oversaturation of collectibles and toys. Because, for example, in the dollar store between $2 and $4, I'm finding Star Wars toys all the time, from stuff ranging from Darth Maul all the way up to the recent stuff like with Finn. So I don't know if it's a good thing for a collector or a bad thing. So, I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. The first run of the real Ghostbusters toy line was created by Kenner and ran from 86 through 1991. It was mostly related to the animated film. However, some of the vehicles, notably the Ecto-1A and Ecto-Charger, were both related to the Ghostbusters 2 film. Also, Filmation's Ghostbusters had a line of toys as well, which was produced by Tyco. Those were the more cartoonish ones. The Kenner line of real Ghostbusters first hit stores fulfilling Christmas pre-orders in 1986. The line continued to be made and sold rather well until 1991. It had 10 waves of toys, vehicles, accessories, stuff that kids could wear, all kinds of different Ghostbuster, anything that you could put Ghostbuster on in the 80s and the first 2 years of the 90s. There was actually one more toy line planned and being ready to put into production, but the line was ended when Kenner and Hasbro merged in late 1991. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures are a toy line based off the franchise of the same name and have been produced by the company Playmates Toys since 1988. The first 3 series of the figures took obvious influence from the original Mirage comics. The Turtles lacked pupils and had bulging muscles with large veins. The blister card art was also very unredefined and reflected the comics. In fact, Shredder's pose was based directly on the art from the debut issue. So all of you that remember having that Shredder and he didn't stand right, that's why. Each figure had at least 7 points of articulation: the neck, shoulders, wrists, and hips. The figures boasted highly defined sculpting, especially for the time. Colorful characters like Trag, Rat King, Mutagen Man, and many others featured intricate details such as small animals crawling on them, scars, torn clothing, and pieces of garbage stuck to them. With the release of the second series in 1989, fans saw 10 new entirely figures, 5 allies and 5 enemies, including 6 new vehicles and accessories, and the first playset. They also came with 9 and 13-inch plush dolls and the official release of the Retro Mutagen Ooze. This was the year that also started for Playmates the Wacky Action sub-series of the Ninja Turtles, where they started spinning their arms at the waist. Wacky Action was merely the tip of the iceberg. As the new decade of the 1990s dawned, Talking Turtles, Head-Dropping Turtles, Mutations, Sewer Sport Turtles, and dozens of other fresh ideas began making their way to toy shelves. With such innovations, Ninja Turtle action figures were sure to gain a foothold in the toy market. And Ninja Turtles are another one of those toy lines that, throughout the decades, up and down, they've stayed on toy shelves. And that's going to do it for the first episode on awesome toy lines, guys. I will be back with more obscure toy lines closer to the fall. We're going to get into some more video game hunting and flea market adventures. I know I've been promising that for like 2 or 3 weeks, but the weather is finally good, so I'm gonna get back out there. And down in the comments, guys, you know, I've missed some really big toy lines still, so let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll try and get to those as soon as possible. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button as well. I'll be back in about a week and a half. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'm out of here.